Hi, I'm Tylor Page. I write horror romance. I am here to talk about my upcoming trad book, Good for Her, that releases April 28th.
Welcome to Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. This is a soft space to explore romance and books where no topic is too taboo. I'm your host, Casey, and this week I am sitting down with author Tylor Page. Today, we're talking about horror romance, revenge, our ultimate final girls, and Tylor's new book, Good for Her, which for me was a 5-star read. If you love horror, Hollywood, and dark romance, this is the episode for you. Tylor, welcome back to the Love Letters and Books podcast. I am so glad you're here.
Me too. The last time we talked, I had just started talking very lightly about it, and you had mentioned maybe coming back. So getting the email, hey, you ready, was very exciting.
And I was so shy about sending that too. I was so nervous sending.
Really?
Just because it feels like you have a lot on your plate. There's a lot going on. This is a big deal. And I see all the promo that's going into this book. But I am so glad you're here. And I loved the book. So I'm really excited to talk about it. So, Tylor, I'm just going to give you the floor. What are we here to talk about today?
So we're talking about Good for Her, which is my trad debut, my traditional publishing debut. It is a horror romance set in Hollywood, and it's things have been pretty exciting over here.
Well, I remember the last time we spoke, I gave you a little bit of my lore, which is that I used to live in the Hollywood Hills in a complex that was specifically built for Hollywood starlets back in the day. And it was in Cahuenga Pass, which is, there's all sorts of like local Hollywood legend about it. But I want to touch on Hollywood itself as the setting, but also almost as a character. Because for anyone who's been to Hollywood or worked in the industry, it's not what you think it is. It's sort of like living in the circus. So just tell us a little bit about how you used Hollywood in this book.
Well, now I'm wondering, now that you've refreshed my memory, because I do remember talking about that. I do wonder. I've got to ask before I answer your question. Did I portray? Because you've read it, right?
Yeah.
So did I portray it good enough, or was it like, oh, this is rough?
No, it was so spot on. It was scary. I was like,
this.
She knows. And the craziest part, Tylor, is that I was so outside of the industry, but all my friends were in the industry. And I was like, she is so spot on right now. This book it just made me feel like I was back there again. I live like in Ojai now, just totally on the outskirts. But no, you captured it so well. And I guess that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it wasn't even just the location. It's the buzz, the energy, that frequency that exists in Hollywood that people outside of it don't really understand is going on, but it's in the communication, the connection, the transactional relationships, all of the things that you captured in this book. So yeah, let's take a step back and talk about what you were thinking about Hollywood as you were writing this.
Yeah. So a lot of my knowledge about Hollywood comes from podcasts. I do listen to a lot of podcasts, specifically movie ones. And there is a few movie ones with the hosts of those podcasts are in Hollywood. So they talk about their experiences a lot. So that's kind of where I formed a lot of my knowledge and opinion on it. And it's its own entity. It's its own world, really, Hollywood. It's the people there are so kind of disconnected from what's going on in like outside. So it was so fun to just be in Hollywood and get to my mind is still there. I want to keep. I'm supposed to be like writing other books right now, but I'm like still in the Good for Her space because it was just so much fun.
Oh, it's a great space to be in. And the book is almost intoxicating in that way, right? Like you fall into it and you feel as if you are on set with Evie and Sebastian and you are in the midst of what they have going on. So before we even get into some of the details about the book, let's talk about the concept of Good for Her and the final girl. For anyone listening who's a little unfamiliar with it, drop us into the lore.
Yes, so Good for Her it's its own subgenre of horror. a lot of people call it like revenge horror or women revenge horror, because a lot of it, unfortunately is a lot of it is like women being, sexually assaulted and taking revenge on their assaulters. Quite a bit of good for her horror is that, but it's just women taking back their power from whatever the instance is. And a lot of my previous books all of them, almost all of them are very meta, and we talk about the horror genre as a whole. So I really just wanted to ramp it up with Good for Her. And yeah, it's just, I love horror so much.
You and I both.
And the final girl is another term that I used in my final girl series. It's basically the lead character, typically the lead female character in the horror story, because I write books, but I always talk about it like I'm writing movies for some reason. But in movies, that's the last survivor, and typically it is a woman.
Well, who is your ultimate final girl? Or you can even give me a top 3.
Oh, it's really hard. Well, I just recently watched the most recent Scream movie. So like my head goes right to Sydney, but I really, because there's so many good ones. It's really hard to say. Hellraiser is really fun, although that one's kind of weird. The rest of the series, I don't know. I can't pick. They're so good. Ripley from Alien, that's a fun one. Laurie Strode, oh my gosh, she's getting up there in age, but she's still kicking. She's still making
Laurie
movies.
Strode is my ultimate final girl. She is incredible. We've been following her since she was like 17 years old. She's been through everything.
I'm gonna go with that just because she's still making movies and she's getting up there. Like,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that for her.
Yeah, and then I think the other one that I absolutely love is from the very first Friday the 13th. Now I'm forgetting her name, but in the final scene when she's in the canoe and she's just in the water trying to survive the night, and we get that like perfect final girl scene at the end of the, you and I both like we're like motioning in the background, no one can see, but we're actually doing the thing that happens. And I forget her name, but she's incredible. And a very unlikely survivor given what happens, but I love that one. So I love geeking out about horror with you because you're one of the few people I can do that with. So thank you, Tylor, for indulging me. But I want to ask you, why is revenge so important and why does it make for such a good story? Like, why do we respond to it so much?
I think it's just because a lot of us have dealt with a lot of those scenarios, especially in like Good for Horror, revenge horror. Because, there is a large, and again, it's unfortunate, population of women that have been hurt, in those. Sometimes those movies are very descriptive and they show, quite a bit. So I think a lot of people can really relate to those victims and they want to see that. They want to see the bad guys get, what's coming to them. And that's why we love those. We root for the murderers in those movies.
Well, that's something I love about your books completely. I felt that in Slasher Pass. I loved it in Good for Her. Now let's pivot to your main characters because I fell in love with both of them. Like, no spoiler, it was very easy to. They're just incredible. Tell us a little bit about Evie.
So Evie she's got a lot going on. Her mom was a famous final girl. So I guess we'll just start there. Her mom was a famous final girl and she grows up on set. She's not in the movies with like her mom or anything back then when she's a kid, but she grows up in the industry. Everyone, on the back end of things love her and know her. And then her mom dies and she just is so upset about how it went down that she leaves. But she still she still loves the genre that she grew up with. So she becomes a podcaster specifically for her. She's living what I want to do. She's doing my dream job, which is being a horror commentator. And she gets really big over there. She becomes the body count bimbo because we're taking back that word. We're taking it back. And she becomes famous in her own right over there. And eventually, when they decide to reboot the series, they decide to ask her to come back to Hollywood. not just because, she's famous and it'll give them clout, which is a factor, but also they kind of want to pay homage to Lita, which is her mom, Lita Reyes, her mom as well, by bringing her back. And
Yeah.
she's ready to come back. She wants to get revenge on those guys and the people that hurt her mom.
Well, there was so much to love about Evie. She's an incredible character. I feel like people are really going to connect with her when they read her. But she has an incredible MMC in this book, and that is Sebastian. So, can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yes. So Sebastian is so fun. So he is very much modeled after the actor that plays Andy in the Child's Play franchise. He grew up on the set. He was a child star and he just grew up with the franchise all the way through. He's been in all of them. And when Evie's mother passes, I don't want to say passes away. She gets murdered. That's on the back of the book. You can see it.
Yes.
um, when she gets murdered, he takes over. They don't replace her. They don't take a new final girl. They just replace it, and he's now the final guy. And he becomes super famous. He's, very, very Hollywood attractive. And, he's put in the work. He knows how to charm a crowd and work, in the industry. And he's, built up quite a he's because they're only 21 in the book, but because he's been in the industry so long, he's built up quite a reputation. Well, not even a reputation, as much as like everyone knows him and he knows everybody, and he's found a way to I don't want to say weasel in either, but like work his way through the industry to he's got some secrets. He's got other people's secrets.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to cover everything. Like, what do I love about Sebastian?
It's hard when it's
He's
everything. It's
it
really hard
is.
when you like adore a character to narrow it down.
Yes. He's very unapologetic too, which is one thing I was just really love about the character. Like he doesn't try to like hide that he, enjoys sleeping with whoever he wants to, or just like partying. He loves that. He's very unapologetically bisexual, and he doesn't let people shame him for it because, some people still do. They still like to, have that stigma. And he's like, no, I'm not going to allow you to do that to me. And I really love that for him. I just love
Can
him in
we
general.
pause
He's
and
just a
talk
fun.
about that for a moment? Because I
Yeah.
love that. I saw that in the media before I even received a copy of the book, and I loved it. You said he's unapologetically queer, and I loved that we had an MMC who was, and you touched on it in this book, and it just I was wondering why that was an important part of his character and this story.
Well, I wanted him to. Well, that's kind of part of his backstory as to how he gets other people's secrets. Is he, sleeps around with multiple bigwigs in the industry, and I wrote it as sleeping with women, sleeping with men, and this book got multiple rewrites. So there are some pieces that got, deleted and stuff like that or enhanced on, but the entire time it was always that yeah, I've slept with a lot of big male CEOs, and if you have a problem with it, then we're gonna have a problem. And it's just how I imagined the character. I just wanted him to be able to like do whatever he wanted and be completely happy with it. And that's one thing that didn't change throughout any of the rewrites is that he was just that's how he was. And that's I guess sometimes that just happens. You see something in a character and that's just how you're going to write them. And I think Sebastian for me was always bisexual.
And it's really a gift to the reader because I feel like it really invites us into his world that we did not see, right? There's a little bit of time between when we first meet him and then we meet him again when he's an adult and we see his whole journey. And I just thought it was great. And you brought us into his Hollywood life. And I do like the idea of people living unapologetically and pushing back against almost the currency of shame that is sometimes forced on us. And
Yeah.
we're allowed to live a certain way or feel certain things as long as we feel bad about it or we're trying to hide it. And it's like, no, why do I have to do that? And I felt like this book kind of pushes back against that. And I just it was really, really well done. And you're not asking for like a pat on the head. I'm not trying to give you, and I'm just saying as a reader, I really enjoyed it. So I just wanted to share that. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's less in, especially in like contemporary romance now, it's not as big of a deal, but still keeping in, as I was writing in a Hollywood setting, we even see it like fairly recently. I don't know if you follow like pop culture or anything, but like Pedro Pascal, they've been on the, hunting for what his sexuality is, or Harry Styles is another one that they, even in modern day, they still have that, like, they're attempting to shame people. And
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why I was so big on making sure that Sebastian was, and I keep using that term, unapologetic, because even though, it may not be as common in more contemporary settings, or, even in our time, it just depends, wherever you're living. But it's still very predominantly in Hollywood.
Yeah.
People are still acting like this. So it was very important for me to make Sebastian like he's written.
Incredible. Well, I loved the journey we got with them. And I just want to say, from my perspective, no one else has to feel this way. But yes, we're in this wild revenge story, sort of campy, like Hollywood set. And at the same time, there's so much love going on in this sort of like love, connection, tenderness, found family. And so it's almost this interesting juxtaposition of what their, I'll use quotes, mission is together and what's actually happening behind the scenes in the relationship, and basically the foundation of their relationship. Like they can really, really be themselves in this dynamic with each other. Like, I felt like that was very much established when they were kids. They got to really just kind of be those kids in the trailer. And I love seeing their relationship evolve. And one of the things I loved in this story, and it's how you open the book, is that they basically have a secret language that everyone around them picks up on, but it's really between them, where they use movie quotes to sort of take the temperature of the room or share an emotion that they can't touch on. So basically, the book opens with beep, beep, Richie, and we're immediately dropped into this secret language that they have. So I want to pick your brain about that. One, what does that do for the readers who recognize these quotes and just like loved reading them? But then, two, why is that such a powerful thing to use quotes when you can't actually say what you want to say and someone else still understands you?
So I'm gonna give you a little peek behind the curtain here. Um, Before they were movie quotes, it was actually, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the word. When you tap, Morse code. It was actually Morse code. And I gave the manuscript, or the first 7 chapters written as if they were doing Morse code, to my agent, and she said, "This is going to be incredibly complicated. We can still send it to the publisher if you'd like, but like it's gonna be hard." And I said, "Okay, give me a little bit of time." And then I brainstormed, and then I came up with the movie quotes. So it wasn't always movie quotes, but I'm so glad I made that decision. I don't know where the idea came from at this point. Oh no, it came from, I was watching like TikToks, and someone, it was like movie fun facts, and it was beep beep Richie was the quote. It said, "Fun fact, in it they use the term beep beep Richie to mean shut up, to stop talking." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's such a fun, cool thing." And I was like, "What if I did that, but like on a larger scale for my characters?" That's where it came from. And that's why it's the opener of the book. It's the first line of the book.
So good.
Um, it is. I honestly think it's one of the reasons why the book sold, because it's their own. I love that it's their own love language, and that we can kind of see how it gives the characters opportunities to be emotional and vulnerable in places that, like scenes that they may not have the opportunity to. Like they communicate through their secret language when other people are around.
Yeah.
So, and like sometimes you can kind of like some of the people around you, they're like, "Oh yeah, that secret language you guys do," or sometimes they try to use it with them, and they're like, "You did it wrong." I think I answered the question. I always do this,
Oh,
so every time you ask me,
absolutely.
I don't know
No,
why.
we're going wherever you wanna go. I love talking about this stuff with you. And then I was thinking about what that offers someone to have that almost code language, to say things that they can't say. Because yes, they do it to have a private communication in front of other people, but it also happens in private moments when they can't say certain things that they want to say. So let's drop into that for a moment and thinking about feeling like you don't have the words, or for some reason the words get stuck. We've all had those moments in our life, but these two have this beautiful language, and there's almost this understanding, and it's going to be a weird word to use, but I'm going to use it anyway, but like a forgiveness of like, okay, I understand what you're trying to say right now. I know you can't say it, but I get the movie quote. So I just felt like it added another layer of emotional depth, and it brought you into their little internal secret world, that energy that flows back and forth between them in a relationship. And it was just so beautifully done. And at the same time, like touching on almost like tugging on the heartstrings of horror fans. Every time you said groovy in the book, I was dying. I was just like, I was like, she knows me. She knows what we love. She really gets it. But let's drop into that space for a moment. Using the quotes to say what you want to say that you feel like you can't say. And maybe just drop us into maybe Evie or Sebastian's mindset when those things are going on. Like, why do they rely on that?
Yeah. So the entire time you were talking, I was thinking of one specific quote, and I'm just gonna say it because you guys are gonna listen, shortly before or shortly after the book is released. Was it "The Exorcist" was on? Was that the
Yes.
quote?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I figured. And then we'll talk about the groovy in a second because that one's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
fun. So that one specifically, it's very emotional. It's very vulnerable. Evie struggles with saying "I love you." Because she doesn't want to. She's there in Hollywood on a mission. She doesn't care how it ends up, how she gets killed in the process, or if she has to go on the run. So she doesn't want to make those permanent connections with people, especially Sebastian. Even though she knows how she feels, but she doesn't want to admit it to herself or to him. So she really, really struggles with that. And Sebastian is just, he spent so long looking for any sort of connection because in Hollywood, everything is transactional. So even people he, did have the opportunity to, date or sleep with or, anything like that, it never really was a love connection because everything's just like, we're doing this for a reason, whether it's networking or whatever. So for him to find somebody, which is Evie, he wants to hang on to that. He doesn't want to let it go. So he's, when he says, The Exorcist was on, he's pleading for her to finish the phrase, to say it back. And I loved it every time I was able to say that. I love the movie quotes in general. I try to use
Yeah.
them as much as possible. And I wanted to circle back to the groovy thing. So my editor, I love her, Jordan, she's wonderful. That was one of the few quotes that she didn't get. She kept saying, because I say groovy a few times, and she was like, she commented, she put in the notes in the document, she goes, "Why do you keep saying this?" And I was like, "It's a movie thing, it's fine." It's
They'll
one of
get
my
it.
favorite ones. I said, the people who need to get it will get it.
Yeah. So, Tylor, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have an all time favorite movie quote that could capture a feeling and be your secret language that you could say in a room full of people and someone would get it?
I don't know if anyone would get it because a lot of my friends don't watch a lot of horror. So it's mostly just, like me or my husband. We're big horror fans, but really not a whole lot other people. Groovy would be a easy one, but just to him because he knows the same quotes that I do. But maybe some of the Misery ones people would probably know because Misery is a pretty big one.
Yeah.
I don't remember if anything from Silence of the Lambs made it in. I can't remember, but Silence of the Lambs
It
would be
did.
an easy one to do.
Silence of the Lambs
It
is
did.
definitely in the book,
It
yes.
did.
I love that I'm telling you because I
Well,
just did the
I have
reread. I feel
it.
like you've had a lot on your plate, but yes, as a Silence of the Lambs fan, I love that you had that in the book.
Oh, Silence of the Lambs. I actually have a tattoo on my arm of Silence of the Lambs. It was my Silence of the Lambs was my first horror book that I read that wasn't Stephen King, and I love Thomas Harris as an author, so I'm glad it made it in. I'm trying to remember what it was now. But no, yeah, Silence of the Lambs. I really love Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, I think he
It'd
he
probably
was
be more.
asking her, like, "Have the lamb stop
Oh!
screaming?" Right?
Yeah, he does whatever it's told.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it
That's
puts
what's important.
lotion,
Yeah,
yeah.
it does whatever it's told. It puts yeah, that one, yeah, that's what made it in. Uh,
Well, no, I loved it, and again, I always tell you when I talk to you that I don't have a lot of people in my life who enjoy horror, so this book was
yeah.
definitely I feel like you wrote this for me, Tylor, because I really, really enjoyed it, and I loved all those little I don't wanna call them Easter eggs, but that secret language that even your readers could pick up on, and I was thinking, "Okay, so what is my favorite line in a horror movie that we probably say in this house or that like I mentioned in like weird moments?" And it's like not what I would imagine, but have you ever seen the film Fatal Attraction with Glenn Close
Yes.
when
Yeah.
she gets into that situation with Michael Douglas? And he's trying to be, like, rational because he's just a guy who cheats on his wife, so he's like, "Oh, I know this terrain, I know what I'm doing," and he's just kinda, like, moving through it. But that moment when she turns and looks at him and she's like, "I won't be ignored," and you just feel you you're, like, actually terrified for him in that moment. You're like, "What is about to happen to this man?" Like, he is unprepared, and, like, yes, he cheated. I don't know that he deserves what's about to happen to him, so I feel like that was my,
Yeah, that was a little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah, that was like
That's a good
a
one.
really intense moment there, but, no, there were just so many things that I loved about the book that I really felt like it was, a love letter for horror fans, for the people who love the final girls, who just really enjoy the genre, but at the same
I
time, Tyler,
do
it was so
call it that.
funny. You have been calling it that? Oh, I love that. Well, obviously, because the
Yeah, I
podcast
call it
title.
my love letter to horror. Yeah.
Oh. I really felt it, but, as I'm mentioning, it was also really, really funny. Like, there was so much levity in that, and I want to ask you about that because that's also a choice of bringing those moments of, like, laughter and irony and things like that. Why was that important for you in this story that could be extremely dark, right? Because when you think about the premise, but at the same time, it was so fun and you were just I don't know, it was like a almost like an amusement park ride, like, it was that energy of, like, the up and down and all over the place.
I think a lot of that was character driven because,
Okay.
they know each other. So they've got that already familiarity of each other. So they really Evie and Sebastian just really play on each other so much. And they rag on each other quite a bit, which helps with the humor. And I guess that's yeah, that's a big part of it is just like I just let the characters do what felt natural and it turned out really funny.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, one of the, I would say, major characters in the book that drives so much of the book is Lita, because, the book opens and we're introduced to this starlet, this final girl, the scream queen, and then it propels the rest of the story. So I want you to tell us just a little bit about her to give the readers and the listeners some background as to why is she so important to Evie? Like tell us a little bit about their connection and what drives Evie throughout this book.
I love Lita, and I wish I had written some more chapters with her in it because she is a powerhouse. She walks in, well, she's in the book, she's, dead, but like when she walked into a room, she commanded power in a male dominated world. Not only a male dominated career or, world, but also Caucasian, white dominated world
Mhm.
as Lita and like all my main female characters is Chicano, which is Mexican American. So especially when she was famous, so like timeline wise, it would be like 90s, 80s, 90s. It wasn't like it is today where, people of color are more celebrated, or marginalized communities in general. So she had to work for that. I just imagine her as like just you can, when she walks into a room, you feel that she has earned her place in Hollywood, and she is not going to let anyone take that from her. And she's a very strong person. I wish I had written a little bit more, but it was all, I'm happy with the book and I'm not going to change anything of it, but like she's just such a strong character. It would have been, nicer to see a little bit more. But I also think that not seeing too much of it helps the reader kind of grieve with Evie, because Evie talks about how people talk about her mom, and she realizes, I lost my mom at 16 and I didn't even know her as much as I would have liked. So I think not seeing her as much as, I'm saying I would like more scenes with her, but not seeing those scenes helps you relate to, or feel with Evie, that like there's so much that she didn't get to experience of Lita.
Yeah, that loss of the imagined future, that relationship that you can have as you grow and you perceive things differently, right? You and I are both, we're not 16, so we look at life differently, right? We were certain at 16, but then at 26 and at 36, like things change and you see things differently and your relationships change. And that was stolen from her. She didn't get to have that with her. And then that leads me to another theme in this book that I really enjoy in your writing, and it's that found family. And what was so interesting in this book is I opened it and you're meeting all these characters and I was immediately suspicious of everyone. I was like, is this a good person, a bad person? Is this like the Billy Loomis? Like, who is this person and can they be trusted? And you wrote this beautiful story of these people almost colliding with one another and finding unlikely connections and people that become their family. So, can you tell me a little bit about why found family was so important in this book, where someone is losing a family member at the very beginning?
Yes. So in listening to a lot of, movie podcasts or film podcasts, I've heard about like how, or like consuming media in general. I watch a lot of documentaries about like the film industry and how they become a family, especially when they're working with franchises where a lot of the same people come back. Whether it's performer like actors, or it's people on the back end doing, there's so many different jobs in movies, all the back end stuff. They form their own kind of family. So I kind of wanted Bryce, who was another character in the film, or in the film, in the movie, or in the book, be there, to be kind of to be a good guy. But as far as I'm blanking on the other person who's like big in the found family in the
Skye?
book. Skye. Yes, because her name is, here's another, behind the curtains fun fact. Skye Riley, her name is, it's one or the other. Riley is either her character in the movie, or it's Skye, or vice versa. And that is named after the character in Smile 2. She is I don't know if you've seen that one yet. In Smile 2, it's centered, the lead character in Smile 2 is she's like a famous singer. She's like the Lady Gaga of that world. And that's who Skye Riley is named after. I just can't remember which way I went with it.
So I love that we've mentioned Skye. And like I said, when I open the book, immediately I'm suspicious. Like, who is this person?
Yes.
And so often women in books and films are almost like pitted against each other. So drop us into this dynamic between Evie and Skye and what the readers can expect.
So their relationship is exactly what you just said. Their relationship is extremely intentional. I wanted the reader to be like, "Oh my gosh, are they going to be like rivals?" Because in the beginning of the book, they are going for the same role. They want the same thing, but for different reasons. They want to be the lead in the Simon Says movie. Skye wants the lead because she's growing her career. So she's like, this would be fabulous if I could get a lead role. And Evie wants the role, even though she's not saying it, because she wants to be with Sebastian. Even Evie is suspicious of Skye's intentions at first. And she's like, is this going to be a whole girl against girl thing, and I don't really feel comfortable with that. And then I immediately pivot from that and they become really, really good friends. And that was so intentional because you see it in media so often that it's to me, it feels, and it's just a very personal opinion. I am not slapping or, talking nasty about anyone who does it. I do not like to pit in my books women against women because society has done it so much to us as it is. I don't have the desire to keep it going. So I made sure to make them besties instead of making them rivals because I wanted to show that kind of relationship.
And I also love when we see, right, like in books or in films, people connect with people they might not have chosen out of a catalog. And that's
Yeah.
really interesting to me because I feel like there's lessons that I always take from that go so far beyond the media you're taking in. It's and you can laugh, but it's like a real lesson in life too of like maybe exactly what I need is something I wouldn't immediately see or pick out. And how humbling and beautiful that is when it's the polar opposite of you and that is the perfect compliment to you, or like that's the best friend that you find is someone that you would almost dismiss of like, oh, that person wouldn't be for me, and they end up being that found family that really makes you feel like safe, seen, heard, connected, all of those things. I personally love that.
Well, I'm glad. And good for hers, their found family. They are all over the place as far as personality goes. And I think that kind of works. Like they love each other for their differences and stuff like that.
Well, one of the other things that I wanted to touch on is that this is a horror romance, sort of like a horror
Mm.
romantic comedy. So, for anyone listening, let's touch on the difference between dark romance and horror romance and why that's important so that somebody coming into this knows what they're opening up and reading.
Yes. So I am very intentional when I say I write horror romance and not dark romance because how I describe it is if I were to take the romance out of my story, it would still be a horror story. Like, say Evie and Sebastian don't fall in love. Evie is still out for revenge and she is going to get her satisfactory ending. The romance is just added in. It's just it's blended. So it's like scary elements blended well with romance. A lot of the times, the bad guys are just the bad guys. They stay the bad guys. They don't get redeemed. Not every time, but like a lot of the times, we just are along for the ride and we just gotta accept that they're gonna stay bad. The bad people get happy endings. But in dark romance, quite often they try to redeem the bad guys a little bit. And even if they stay bad, they find redeeming qualities, and it is very romance based. If you took the romance out, the plot necessarily wouldn't make quite as much sense. It is way more romance, love story driven than horror romance. If
Oh, I
that
love
makes
that
sense.
oh, it does, and I love that explanation, and I love clarifying for a listener who might be like, this is one of their first, right? Like, if this is their first experience with horror romance, I always like people to know what they're getting when they go into it, so there's not that, "Oh, I thought it was this." Just being open to the experience, and I love horror romance, so I'm so excited that you wrote this book, and I wanna touch on that journey a little bit, so if we can pivot to your personal experience, one thing that stood out to me is that I recently saw you post about, and again, forgive me, these are my words, this is my summary. Your words might have been different, but how good it felt to recently write a blurb and refer to yourself as the author of Good for Her. And what a switch that was from writing that you're the author of Slash or Pass, which a lot of people know you from. But it's that moment
Yeah.
when you realize, like, oh, that maybe that thought I have in my head where, like, oh, I'm just this, or people are only going to know me for this, and you've expanded beyond that. So those are my words, but I would love to drop into that space and hear what you think about that.
Yeah. So Slasher Pass is what I'm known for currently, mostly. That was my first breakout book. It is a horror romance as well. And I have so much love for that book, but it was written and published in 2023 now. And since then, Slasher Pass gave me a lot of opportunities, which eventually led me to my publishing deal. And I will always have love for that book, but I've also, as I've, started my traditional publishing journey, I don't want so I've got a lot of thoughts. Um, I would like this to be my career for the next 30, 40 years. And I don't want my career to be only Slasher Pass that I wrote in 2023. I want to continue to grow and, expand my career. And I did not want to only be known as the author of Slasher Pass. I've done quite a bit more, since then. And, I'm about to go into a whole new area of publishing. And I started out as an indie author, and now I'm switching to trad. When you do that kind of thing, I haven't published a book in a year. It'll be almost a full year. And well, it'll be like a year and a week since I last published when Good for Her releases. And readers' attention goes really fast. So in that year, I have had this constant worry of people are no longer interested in me because it's been so long since I've published a book. I've had this worry that like, that people are thinking, "Oh, she's still doing stuff? I didn't know she was writing anymore," because they don't see me all the time. They don't see Slasher Pass making headlines like they did. So I've had this worry about, fading into obscurity and being, "Oh yeah, she's the girl that wrote Slasher Pass, that one time." So as Good for Her is starting to gain momentum, it started gaining momentum pretty quickly in 2026. And I'm hearing all these really good things, and the people who have read it are saying really good things, and it's I'm seeing my numbers on the back end that I can't talk about, but those are really good. And it's looking like, Good for Her is going to, fingers crossed, be a success. So it just felt really good when one of my peers, Allie Oleander, if you ever get the chance to talk to her, she's wonderful. Go do it.
Adding it to the list right now.
She's wonderful. She asked me to blurb her next book. So I read it and I did. And then I had that moment. I was like, what do I put on the book, or what do I put for my blurb? And I was like, you know what? Good for Her isn't out yet, but I feel confident in switching what people know me for and say, instead of Tylor Page, author of Slasher Pass, I said Tylor Page, author of Good for Her. And it just felt wonderful because my confidence, I feel like my confidence is back. I'm no longer, I mean, I'm probably in a lot of circles still known as the author of Slasher Pass, but I feel really good knowing that eventually I'll be getting, various titles and stuff like that that don't necessarily pertain to Slasher Pass.
Oh, I appreciate that just honest and transparent sharing about it. And so, can you take a step into that and say to anyone listening who feels similarly in their own life, right? Whether it's a relationship, a job, a role that they play in the world that they feel very attached to, and then have the opportunity to step into something else. Is there something you can share about your own experience of this that you can offer them of taking that leap and leaning into, I don't want to say a new identity, but like leaning into expansion outside of what maybe somebody would know you from?
Yes. So sometimes that's scary for sure. But I recently, again through TikTok, saw a video where someone said, when you start your career or whatever you're doing, you need to take the stairs instead of trying to jump on the elevator. And I've been sitting. I heard it about a week ago, and I've just been sitting with it quite a bit. And I'm going somewhere with this. Sorry, I'm trying. I think it's very scary to make those kind of leaps like that. But you should always remember that it doesn't have to be a leap, getting on the elevator and jumping up to the 20th floor. It's something as simple as just taking those steps instead and going slower and making those steps intentional. You're going to get to where you need to go, but it doesn't have to be as scary and as daunting as it may seem, right, when you're just looking at it, right there. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
No, it absolutely does, and I feel like those conversations are important. And so anyone could listen and say, "Well, you're a book podcast. Why are you talking about that?" I'm like, "Because we relate so deeply to the themes and the messages that come through these books." And it's also a community of women who are stepping into this very visible creative space. And also it's a profession, and putting yourself out there, and what goes into that. And so I always like to ask because I feel like people can relate to that, and it's important because we may not be in that position today, but it could be the next thing around the corner. And how do you prepare for that? I'm watching you from the outside, right? Like, I follow you on social media, I'm seeing all of this stuff. I love your books, so I'm always interested in what's going on. And to see you step into this space with this traditionally published book, and hearing you say, I want to do this for the next 30, 40 years. Like, this is what I want to do. I think about the version of you who, and I've seen you reference this on social media, who was working full time, who had to take that leap, who had to say, I'm investing in myself and in what I believe I can do, and I'm going to make a shift. And you have full response, you have a life outside of writing, family, obligations, all these things, and you took that chance. So I want to just drop into that space as we're sort of nearing the end of the episode and think back to that version of Tylor and talking to her from where you are today, right? You're a few weeks out from this book being released, and you're going to see it in bookstores everywhere, and like, I'm
Mhm.
giddy for you. Like, I'm so excited for you. But talk to her for a moment. What would you have told her about this experience, or things she could do to, I don't know, take care of herself on the journey?
I don't even know. I feel because I'm just a very even when I don't feel confident, I'm a very cocky person. So like even if like I'm not feeling very good about, how things are going, I'm not going to let it show even to myself really. So I feel like if I told my past self like look what happened, I feel like I'd be like of course it did. Because naturally, I knew that it would happen eventually. Um
Even the dogs agree. I love it. I'm keeping this in. They're the exclamation point to what you just said.
there's something. Yeah, yeah, it's I think a lot of people really think that, like, people wrote a book and it became wildly successful, and I as someone who didn't write one book and got very successful, I really like to remind the people following me on social media that that was not the case, that I took the stairs. I made a lot of mistakes and I worked really, really hard for the job that I have. And I learned so much in taking the stair. I'm just gonna keep doing that. I think I'm gonna get a tattoo that says something along "Take the stairs." I really, really loved it when I heard it. So, I just really like to remind people occasionally that like it was not as easy as just waking up one day and becoming a bestseller.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that people don't get really discouraged when they jump into the author career and they're not instantly famous. It's a growth, and it's okay. Some people will get successful very fast, and that's wonderful for them, and I'm happy for them. But that's not the case every time, and it's okay if that's not the case.
I love that we're talking about this because I know in the moment when you are taking the stairs, right? And you're huffing and puffing and you're like, oh my God, this is impossible. I know in the moment it feels like there's nothing on the other side, or it can feel very easy to give up. And I think about even in my own career and, other things in my life. And as I'm hearing you talk about it, I'm thinking there were so many valuable moments that I experienced on the stairs that I would have missed if I just went directly to the penthouse in an elevator. And I just feel like if that's something we can maybe leave the listeners with from this episode is like, it's not, I guess I'm thinking of how to say it. Like, looking back, right? I don't regret it, even if it's painful in the moment when you're getting up the stairs and like you're nodding on camera. I know people probably won't see this, but
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
back, I'm like, there were so many moments, whether they were cringe or informative or scary or exciting, just so many moments along the way that you don't want to miss. And in the moment, you can tell yourself, no, 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 I know exactly where I want to be. And it's like, you know what? maybe it's a circuitous path, maybe it's a little bit of a trudge, but it's about like being in the moment when you're in it. And I really remember from your previous interview how much you shared about learning along the way. And I'm very much taking it to heart because you were sharing about like, yes, this is my career. I want to do this forever. And I had to learn certain things. I had to listen to the feedback. I had to listen to the readers. I had to listen to myself and figure out what I wanted to put out there. So I love that we've had this conversation and we're kind of winding down this episode with that. So, Tylor, I want to close with information. What
Yeah.
do people need to know about the release of this book, where to find it, when it's coming out, all the details? So, I'm just going to give you the floor.
Yes. So Good for Her releases April 28th in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. The audio people are really cool. I'm really excited to hear them. You can find it in the Walmart bestsellers stack or wherever they're going to put it. All I know is Walmart bestsellers. Target picked it up at Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, anywhere else like any other bookstore you're going to find it at. But specifically Walmart and Target are the big ones that are not bookstores. I'm trying to think of other places or other good things. I think that's like the quick pitch. So you're going to be able to get it everywhere.
Good for Her by Tylor Page, April 28th. I can't wait because I know myself. I cannot wait to walk into Target and see you on the shelf. You're going to get a DM. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm warning you in advance. I'm going to be really, really excited about that because I love this
No,
book and I'm so proud of you.
I want to see them. I want to see people going to, their, because that's like, those are big milestones. I don't think people realize I did not realize how hard it is to get into a store that is not a actual bookstore.
Yeah.
Apparently, as it turns out, it is very, very hard. So to be able to get those, it's a good sign.
It's a good sign. No, I love that. Well, Tylor, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. I always love talking to you. I'm so excited about this book. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait for everyone else to read it. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really was when I started, ramping up and was like, "Hey, people contact me." I was really hoping you would because we had talked about it last time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
I
really
think the
glad.
dogs are ready for us to wrap up. Anyway, Tylor,
Yeah.
thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can find me on both Instagram and TikTok at Love Letters and Books. And if you are interested in being a guest on Love Letters and Books, suggesting your favorite author, or just want to write in an original love letter to yourself or someone else to be read on air, please send me an email at lovelettersandbookspodcast@gmail.com.